Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Hum PR Karne Wale. And now we're actually path breaking and bringing in a journalist. Now Shakur sir is not just a journalist, he's also an author, and now he's jumped into the role of a CEO, but before he was also managing events and marketing for NASCOM. Thank you so much sir for taking out your precious time today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Shakur sir, you've been my mentor since 2019. We met at PTI, and you've been such a great journalist when it comes to science, medicine, and even technology for that matter. So, was it always that you wanted to be a journalist, or the introvert that I know you to be? Did you have other plans in life?
To be honest, I was always interested in science. So I did my bachelor's in biochemistry. Later on, when it was about choosing between MSc or some other field, uh, I was already doing MSc. But
Hmm.
then I also got selected into mass communication department at Kashmir University.
Okay.
And then I thought, let's find out, what happens there. I went there, I joined, and I started liking the place. And then I always had this knack for writing. I had already started writing for local newspapers, which were popular ones. And when I attended those classes, those days, BBC through Ford Foundation had workshops.
Yes.
They had a tie-up with Kashmir University,
Mm-hmm.
and they used to conduct these workshops. And I kind of started liking those because you had, people like Stephen Hall and all, coming all the way from UK
Mm-hmm.
to teach you. So
Yes.
yeah, so it kind of stuck with me, those workshops, and then I found it very interesting also,
Mm-hmm.
and I never looked back after that.
Oh, that's such an amazing journey because as I've seen your work, you speak very less, but you're very pointed in your words. And you're also a very calm and cool leader, like a Dhoni of the PR and journalism industry. Because I've never really seen you fret over a story. Maybe you have in the dark of the night or probably during a stressful news day. But I remember I worked under you in NASCOM, and you gave me that opportunity, which I'm also so thankful for.
For the India AI Global
Yes, India
Summit, yeah.
AI Summit we did,
Mhm.
and it was much better than what happened this time. We're not going to comment much, but yes, I still remember that you were having this water can and you were just chilling, and you knew that you'd done the work, so everything will be managed. You trusted your team. So, I always ask this in the end, but I want to bring in the team aspect because
Mhm.
with a person like you who's been a correspondent but now is a CEO, how important is it for you to have a team that you can rely on and who understands you and who you understand?
See, being from being a part of the teams to having your own teams, I think my journey has been, it's gone through the traditional way,
Yeah.
like it should be, because for any company to work well or for any team to work well, you need to delegate, tasks
Yes.
to the people who know that best. I cannot say that I'll be the reporter myself, I'll be the
Hmm.
researcher myself, I'll be the social media guy myself,
Of
right?
course. Yes.
You kind of, have to see, you have to identify those people within your team,
Hmm.
assign those tasks to them, and then kind of wait and let them do. You don't need to micromanage
Of course.
all the time.
Hmm.
So that is what I do. That is what my process is. And you're right. When you see something good happening, there's a lot of research that has gone behind.
Yes.
There's a lot of work that has gone behind identifying those people,
Hmm.
assigning them. That is primarily my job as a CEO. Because I don't report anymore. And even when I was reporting, that's what my bosses used to do. They would assign me a specific role, and I would go and do it to the best of my abilities, right? And that is what I expect from my team as well. And I
Hmm.
trust them, and give them the support, they need. And that is how I think successful campaigns, come into being.
Of course, sir. Now, you've also been an author. And what is interesting about your work is that it's a love story, but it also encompasses the, intricacies of the place you're born in. So, a similar book I've been reading is The Alchemy of Desire by Tarun Tejpal, which is actually smut or erotica of sorts, but way more sophisticated. I
Mhm.
mean, the kind of language they've used is beautiful. It cannot be called vulgar at all.
Right.
And between the love story of a Sikh boy and a Muslim girl is the components of India, and a romance with an unknown American woman who,
Mhm.
whose notes have been left in the house which they reside in.
Mhm.
So, could you talk a little bit about your book and what inspired you to write it, and if you want to continue being an author, or if you want to take a more sharper stance at political commentary one day, because I know you refrain from it.
See, the book comes from my lived, experiences in Kashmir. I used to go to university, right? I
Hmm.
used to see the socio-political scenario around. I used to come back. Those all those things would stay with me, right?
Yeah.
And then when you were not doing anything, you would kind of vent those
Hmm.
things out and write it. It's I never thought that I'm going to write a book.
Yes.
I just started, penning down my thoughts, what
Hmm.
I was
Hmm.
looking
Hmm.
around, what I could see around me. And one finding, it kind of took a shape of a book. Through and then I kind of had to string it through something, and that was a love story.
Hmm.
It's completely fictional,
Of
but the
course.
stories around it are totally, that you can relate to.
Yes.
So one episode that I want to share here is, I saw one person, in a matador,
Mm-hmm.
and he was looked very sad, because and when somebody inquired, what's wrong, he said that my due to the curfew and all, we couldn't save the cow that which was with us for a long time,
Hmm.
and this kind of stayed with me. I thought that I could relate to this pain, and how can I write something where this cow becomes symbolic
My
of a
God.
situation, of the
Yeah.
scenario, overall scenario in Kashmir. And that's how one of the chapters came into being. It's called the lost cow. Yeah,
Hmm.
basically the
No, but
lost
that's
cause.
so
Yeah.
beautiful and so intriguing because, you're a science person yourself and you come from a culture where animals are worshipped. India is known for that. And no matter what religion we belong to, what dietary preferences we have, we all have a soft corner for, even our furry friends.
Hmm.
So, I want to understand, is there something that, bothers you about how India has changed? And, I know that you don't want to go political here, but still, I mean, there was an India which used to be pained by, the loss of a pigeon. So there was a king who gave his portion of thigh to, compensate for that, and that's a test by gods.
Right.
Versus in Hinduism, also we see a lot of sacrifices, to save rajas, and there's the
Hmm.
Ashwamedh yag and all of that. But then we were focused on, how Muslims are having bakras on Eid, and the PETA is kind of targeting them, and then you've got TCS Nasik, but then
Hmm.
you've also got those fringe groups working who are of Hindu heads. So I mean, all of this bothers us. We might be tech journalists writing on AI,
Hmm.
but we are not oblivious to the realities of India, because this is the country we grow up in. And even though you travel the world,
Hmm.
what are your experiences in how the world is changing, not just from 2014, because you don't want to target a government, but we want to understand how we can cope with this changing time for probably a young student who's just watching you.
Right. So, across the world, if you see, there has been this kind of numbness that has come in, to the pain of others, and also
Hmm.
the othering at the same time, right?
Yes.
So, this is a general trend across the world, and we are living in a post-truth world.
Mm-hmm.
So, where you things don't bother you anymore. We've reached a stage, where there may be killings happening,
Hmm.
wars happening,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
I mean, it impacts us to a certain extent, but after that, we kind of forget it. And we always think, as long as I am safe, my community is safe, or my area is safe, nothing is going to bother me. But all of this, it kind of trickles down,
Of
right?
course.
Something is happening in, say, Palestine, you might think it is not impacting you. It is.
Yeah.
Geopolitics is something, which can shake the entire
We
world.
never cared about Gaza or Russia until the Strait of Hormuz blocked our own LPGs.
Exactly, yeah. So exactly my point. Or something, we think that, oh, something is happening in the US, and we should not be bothered. We should,
Maybe the ICE deportations, because Indians self deported, and there were like old women of Sikh origin, not even of Muslim or minority communities. A Sikh woman was deported and she was 65, so she spent her life in the US. Now she doesn't have an identity because she doesn't relate to India anymore. So it's quite painful of how the world has gotten worse and worse every day. Like we were discussing offline of how
hmm,
a 22-year-old was murdered, and she was the daughter of an IRS officer. So if a government bureaucrat's daughter is not safe while the parents are gone gymming, now people will blame that they should be more vigilant. They should not leave their child. She's 22. Like I am 27 and today can I sleep alone in my house if my mother is staying in Lucknow or my father is traveling for work? So it's something that really bothers us. But coming back to science and I want to understand, how has science shaped your outlook, and how has science matters kind of done what you weren't able to do at your previous organizations?
See, growing up, I always used to ask questions. Why are the stars hanging up there? As a kid even.
Yeah.
Like I always was curious about things, and science kind of gave that shape to those curiosities, right? And that scientific temperament
Hmm.
developed. And I
Hmm.
think it's across the segments. People, everyone should have a scientific
Yes,
temperament. They should be
absolutely.
curious. They should be questioning things. Why is this thing a certain way, right?
Hmm.
So that I think it becomes very important. And in an era which is now dominated by AI, I
Yes,
think critical thinking becomes the most important skill you can have, right?
absolutely.
People ask me this, no, what do you think? What is the one skill that people should learn
Hmm.
in this area, technology-driven area, yeah, era? So I tell them if it has to be one skill, it has to be critical thinking.
Hmm.
So science always shapes, how we look at things, how we explore the world, how we make sense of the world,
Hmm.
right? So even when I started as a political journalist,
Hmm.
it kind of after a few years this opportunity came up, where I could contribute to something which was in the realm of science, and I took it up. I thought that this is not something, my science studies didn't go waste, right? And as a science journalist, if you have a background in science, you're able to do more justice to that subject,
Hmm.
because you know how the research processes, you know the terms, you can differentiate between a hormone and an enzyme, right?
Yes.
So that nuance is very important. I tell people this is an era of specializations, right?
Yes.
So if you specialize in something, you need to have certain knowledge about that subject,
Hmm.
and it'll definitely help you. I was a science journalist for almost 12 years now at PTI. So that did help me. I went to report from 15 countries. So it goes on to tell you, that if you study about something and then use it
Yeah.
as a beat, this is you are going to succeed in it.
Of
Coming back to
course.
science matters. I think in India we had a lot of science communication platforms, but we didn't have a science journalism platform,
Yes.
and also sci-tech literacy platform. So
Hmm.
that was when I thought about this. I did a little bit of research also. We didn't have a platform like this. That is how
Hmm.
Science Matters came into being. And ever since we started, we are now part of the UNESCO MIL, media information uh, media and information literacy alliance. We are also part of the Google News Gaps project now. So things are falling in place, and Science Matters is gaining attention.
Now I know, so that you never like to talk about your age, but you've not even crossed 40 and you've done so much in life. I mean, it's so inspiring for somebody as young as me. But I want to understand the switch that you took from journalism to probably PR, marketing, events, and now,
Mhm.
helming an organization as a CEO who has to do everything under the sun, who just can't be a simple correspondent like you were back in your days of, being a politics journalist or then a science journalist. So, how has the switch treated you? Because I know so many PR folks who have come from journalism who take their sweet time approaching a journalist friend for stories. There's always this inhibition that I used to be on that side of the table.
Mhm.
So is it the same case with you? Do you miss your reporting, or do you now see that what you want to do, but there was a time when you were reporting to someone and you were not expected to be a journalist? So how did you manage those expectations?
You're right. When you are a journalist, your expectations from the PR are totally different, because you've not been on the other side. But when you
Yes.
are on the other side of the table, you then start thinking, how was I treating a PR person, right?
Yeah.
I've seen this, hate love relationship between journalists and PR persons. And many a times I've seen journalists shouting at PR
Yes.
people. But when you are on the other side, you understand, the deadlines that they go through, uh, all the things that they have to, they don't reach out to someone, a journalist, because they just have to.
Yeah.
But at the same time, PR people should also do a lot of
Research.
research, yeah, because if you see, if you are a science journalist and you're getting invitation to a political event or a press release which is not related to you, so that is where some groundwork is
No, you're
required, right?
very right. I and another friend of mine, we used to run this kind of a campaign on LinkedIn. We used to call out any kind of PR without taking their names and actually, tell them that this is not acceptable. The reason we did not go to their DMs was because we wanted not the same mistake to be repeated. We wanted it to be flagged, and they not to repeat it and take it in the right spirit. But of course, I got a lot of backlash for it that, you're very rude, you've kind of forgotten your community, you've come from PR, you've become a total journalist, and the journalism community never really accepted me, which is why even I jumped into the CEO's role whenever I could, like probably for Soul School, which was a mental health startup, to now exploring PR podcasts and something or the other. Like, I am not 30, so I am just giving myself time to see what I would do.
Hmm.
But this is the kind of dilemma that the Gen Zs face. I'm sure that you're working with a lot of Gen Zs because you're going for AI trainings, not just in the defense quarters of the country or internationally, but also to the colleges of the country, be it government or private.
Hmm.
So what is that one anxiety or trait that you're seeing in the Gen Z's which you thought that you wouldn't have back then, and which was a good thing, and now you're a little concerned that okay, this generation is actually not in the right hands or not in the right spirit? So is there a kind of an experience like that?
I think with Gen Zs, the best quality that if one quality that I can learn, from the Gen Z is the ability to say no.
Hmm.
I think that is something we lacked as millennials.
Millennials,
Yeah, we lacked
yes.
that. A lot of times we didn't like doing something, but we still couldn't say that
Say
no.
no.
So that is where I think we can learn a lot from Gen Zs. At the same time, if I have to give an advice to the Gen Zs, that is to read a lot and read the
Hmm.
right sources.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was having this conversation with my brother yesterday that when we were when we came into this field, we were reading Paul Krugman, and we were reading Noam Chomsky. We were reading
Yes.
we were reading people who were experts not just because of their name, but because of the kind of work that they had done. We were reading Orwell, Dostoevsky, you know all kinds of literature. And today's Gen Z, I don't know, it's also because they are overwhelmed with a lot of information now. There's an
Yes.
information overload on them,
Absolutely.
and attention spans have dropped, right? We keep talking about attention spans. Now they are more glued to Samay Rainas and others, nothing against us, but this is just an example, because if you don't consume the right kind of information, I think you are not going to evolve your thinking. Your brain rot will come in,
Yes.
and then AI slop is making it even more worse, right?
Absolutely.
So even now, one advice would be read a lot, writing, be it creating podcasts or any other thing. The basis is laid in good writing.
Hmm.
So identify those good writings and read them. Read long form.
Yes.
Long form,
Yes.
although, is making a comeback.
Yes, it is. It
In
is.
podcasts and all, and
Yes.
even in magazines, it's making a comeback. Why?
Magazines, probably like a morning context, which has like details and details of
Exactly.
explainers, like how Byju's fell down, how Ola is problematic. The kind of stories they matter to people.
How can somebody explain, a phenomena in 2 minutes?
Absolutely.
It is humanly not possible to explain something in 2 minutes. And if
Yes.
you're going to consume that, then your information is going to be as good as anybody is. You will never
Yes.
have a deeper understanding of the issues, right?
Absolutely.
You will never know how can you understand quantum mechanics in 2 minutes.
Like, we have these apps which are kind of concising huge books of like 400, 500 pages into just nine audibles. So probably like 9 minutes and I'm done with the book. Like, probably I'm showering and I just listen to this book. But this is also multitasking, and this is such a small form that I'm just getting the basic words, the basic titles of the chapter, and not probably
Exactly.
the examples or the kind of deep dive that the author did. Because you've been an author, I am also writing these days, so I understand that there's so much that goes into writing. There are days when you just have a creative block, and there are days when you just you have a cigarette in your hand, and in the other hand you have a phone and you're typing away कि ये idea ना चला जाए, or you're recording like on a pager, or your proper phone only आप voice note बना रहे हो कि ये वाला thought चला ना जाए मेरे दिमाग से. So it is so much of work to be a comms person, on either side, like probably being an author, being a journalist. Like we are seeing Chetan Bhagat do so much, and
Right.
then people question कि अच्छा ये अब psychologist कब से बन गया? But he is reading. I think reading is a superpower which this generation has forgotten. But I always wanted to discuss AI in detail with you. But one detailed question I have for you is, how do you think people can, get out of the AI slop or the brain rot? Like, of course, now we understand that the M dashes and there is a language that AI follows. So LinkedIn पे समझ आ जाता है कि ये वाले लीडर ने अपना दिमाग नहीं लगाया है. And
Right.
there are some senior people who used to mock at me saying कि chat GPT nahi chalega, and I see their LinkedIn posts being chat GPT, and I'm like, I really wanted to call them out in the DMs, at least if not on public platforms. And I was like ki, who can explain them? But I do understand that AI is important, but at the same time over dependence is happening. So your bird eye view of this very vague issue, because you've been somebody who's training people for AI, so I think you should have the
Right.
last say.
So basically, see, the AI that we are talking about now is mostly Gen AI we are talking about, right?
Yes.
AI has a history. It goes back to 1950s, right?
Hmm.
When Alan Turing, gave the concept first, right? When
Hmm.
he said that, can machines think like humans? And ever since, so many papers were written on it, so many conferences were held, and AI developed over a period of time.
Hmm.
What's strong now is, like with any other technology, we are also falling in that trap.
Yes.
We kind of overestimate an impact of a technology in the short run,
Hmm.
and underestimate its impact in the long run.
Long run, of course.
Yeah, that is what is happening to AI also. I think there are three schools. If we have time here, I want to explain them.
Mm-hmm.
There are three schools, broadly. One, there are who are like more into gloom and doom. That AI will take
Eat away the jobs and
all the
everything.
jobs and all. And then there are people like Jeffrey Hinton himself, the godfather of AI. He says that we'll reach a stage in a few years where we'll have, for the first time in the history of humankind, beings which are smarter than humans, right? So something that they call super intelligence,
Yes.
or artificial general intelligence.
Yes.
So then there are pragmatics, people who have a very pragmatic approach of AI, that it's like a technology.
It's a tool.
Yeah, it's a tool. We use it like any other tools
Probably
that
like
are
an
coming.
Excel or like a calculator of sorts.
Exactly. Earlier we had typewriters and computers
We
came
have
in.
Google searches.
Internet, Google,
Yeah.
Wikipedia, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we all use them. Imagine, somebody writing a news story and then taking a bus all the way to the printing press
Of course.
and getting it printed, right?
Yes.
We've come a long way. So AI will help you in that direction.
We remember Johannes Gutenberg, right? How he had to rewrite the Bible for a year because एक page गलत हो गया था.
Exactly. So, so take AI as like any other technology. The only difference is that this technology is evolving at a very rapid pace, right? Very fast pace. Other technologies took maybe decades to develop. This might develop within 4 or 5 years, right? And already we are talking about AGI now, right? We already have agents now.
We
We're
have
talking about
agents.
AGI, super intelligence already.
Super intelligence is scary because Vidya Shekhar Sharma has been talking about it since 2023. And I've been following him. Of course, Elon Musk is one person who is very scary because Mars tak jana theek tha. That everybody thought ki bada mushkil hai. But now he is actually bought in Twitter, given all of its data to Grok. So Grok has just eaten it, and now is behaving like a human, and of course it's acting up. Of course it's hallucinating. But AI,
I call Grok the bigda bacha of AI,
He is, he is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So before I forget, the third point,
Uh-huh.
there are now people like, now that everybody is worried about AI and everything, there are a third set of people, including Michael Burry. I don't know if you know him.
Mm-hmm.
He was one of the few people who predicted the 2008 recession.
Oh.
So this person says there will be an AI winter. He has already, he's already betting against this AI thing.
So he's saying that it's a bubble which will burst.
Yeah, which will burst, like, in 2008, the housing bubble caused a recession. He says that, due to the AI bubble breaking, it will also lead to another recession. He has already started, they call it short putting against Palantir and Nvidia shares.
Oh.
Although
Okay.
Nvidia and Palantir, they say that this is rubbish,
Of
but you
course.
cannot take him lightly. He's one of the few
cannot.
people who, he became hit due to the film The Big Shot, right? So we all saw he was, from the word go, he was very convinced that this bubble is bursting. And
Hmm.
there are people now who also think alike, who think that AI winter
And
will
which
come.
school do you belong to?
I think I am somewhere in the middle. I don't know if it'll, I'm not an economist or some financial person who can predict, market and all. But I'm someone who thinks that, AI as a technology will stay.
Mm-hmm.
We'll use it as a co-pilot. It will take some jobs which are already in the process
Oh,
being
getting
automated.
eliminated, of course.
Right. And it'll do it at a rapid pace. That is the
Yes,
only difference.
yes.
But it'll also create a lot of jobs. So I'm thinking of it like a pragmatic person, that it's a technology, use it as a co-pilot. Don't get, too much overwhelmed by how and when it's going to do that, right?
Hmm.
You, skill yourself, Skilling is, I think, it's been our, in our history, we always have upskilled ourselves, right?
Yes, of
So that
course.
is what we
Change is
need
the
to
only
do.
constant.
Exactly. A AI or a machine can never be a reporter, for example, right? It can never be. It might help you write a better copy. It might help you transcribe, translate your story, but it will never be able to go on the ground and report. Talk to a human person who's in distress. How will it do
Yes.
that?
See, people are using AI for distress. You remember my article of a 16-year-old who killed himself, this New York Times
Hmm.
expose of how, OpenAI was sued for this case. And, there was a whole talk about how AI should not be into the mental health zone. And then slowly everybody came in and said, okay, AI PR mein nahi aa sakta, AI journalism mein nahi aa sakta. But then
Hmm.
we've got a Reuters or probably an AVP having a software which helps journalists write better, but that's to cut the desk job time so that they can go and they can report in probably the locations which are underserved. Like there was a teacher who was explaining her fears about AI, and I told her
Hmm.
that a teacher like you cannot reach Madhya Pradesh, but then your clone can, and a
Right.
kid in Madhya Pradesh deserves you.
Exactly.
So I mean, if you're sitting in Gurgaon and this is the hub of education, or probably like a Mumbai, or probably like a Montreal, which is in Canada, so we can have like a shared world, which we had in 2020 as IMCNs, because we were closed down. So 200 EJ students were studying with all the faculty of the 6 institutions in the online setup, which never happened. Still doesn't happen too
Hmm.
often because of the on the off campus setup, the on
Right.
campus setup, and the offline setup as we call it. But this has been a very interesting realization, the entire school of thoughts of AI, and how they can or cannot replace humans, because we're seeing so much of importance to in-person conversations also. But in our communications field, what zones do you think will still be dominated by humans, and what are the ones which you think people should just stop focusing on right away, because AI will anyways do that?
I think, when you talked about healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
in healthcare, AI can easily do jobs where, there is data and you have to analyze it. For
Hmm.
example, radiology, right?
Hmm.
What kind of a lump can be a cancer? AI can tell that,
Hmm.
right? But when it comes to giving, personal care, I think AI still lags there, right?
Hmm.
Even in a simple job like cooking, we've
Hmm.
seen the modern robots, how they fail. To
Yeah.
be honest, they are not able, they don't have that human touch, to be
Yes.
honest. When it comes to communication, I said, writing, editing, researching, transcribing,
Hmm. Hmm.
translation,
Hmm.
right? All these fields that can help you. For
Hmm.
example, I as a journalist, I used to dread transcribing something.
Hmm.
Imagine transcribing hours of, hours of interviews or
Yes.
press conference.
And then we got an otter which just saved our lives.
Exactly. Then we had, tools like Otter,
Hmm.
so which helped us, right? So they save a lot of time, but
Yes.
even then you have to entirely go through that transcript,
Of
right?
course.
So that human will always stay in the loop.
Hmm.
It
Hmm.
will not just be, the human will not only be in the loop, the human will be constantly supervising this.
Hmm.
And now we have seen, how AI has gone wrong in so many ways,
Yes.
right? We see AI has, led to caste bias in India. There
Hmm.
was a
Hmm.
story
Hmm.
I read in the print, which explained, how the biases are coming into AI, because the
Yes.
data is coming from humans, and we as humans are biased.
We are. We are.
So that bias is also creeping into these AI
Systems.
systems.
Yes.
So you have to be aware of what is coming into AI, and how it is, what kind of data is there. Is it representational? Is it, when Stable Diffusion came in initially, and you would tell it to create a image of a Indian woman or a
Hmm.
Latino woman, all the stereotypes would come in. A
Yes.
Latino woman would be shown as someone who was like maybe promiscuous and wearing less clothes and all. Similarly, an Indian woman would be shown someone dark and
In a sari,
yeah,
probably,
all the
with
stereotypes
flowers.
exactly
Yes.
would come in. Later on, these tools have improved, but
But didn't
even
you
then,
remember that Gemini tried to generate the image of a pope, and every time it was somebody non-white? So they were anti-bias. I mean, to
exactly
a point where they were biased against whites.
right.
Whites are also part of the community, right? Like in South Africa, they're being discriminated. So I mean, Samir has talked about color bias in probably South Indian states. And there is always a bias against the minority. Now, whatever environment you choose, that is upon you. And it's very interesting, sir, to talk to you about things which are not just AI, science, and technology, but also geopolitics. Because when you talked about AI taking place, you are seeing that now first it was said that data is the new oil, and now oil is the new data. That is what is happening in the Strait of
Right.
Hormuz. And I know that you don't want to touch very deeply into the political conversation, but when do you think, um, not in a generic sense, but just kind of talking about the Strait of Hormuz in the Middle East, do you think this conflict is going to come to an amicable solution, or do you think that such issues will be kept broiled up to actually power the politics of some people, some stakeholders who are benefiting from it?
I think something or the other will keep coming up. You know,
Hmm.
you will see a war happening in Palestine, then you'll see a war happening in Lebanon, then you will see it in Middle East. I think something or the other will keep coming up. Like now the conversation is that they want to get rid of the old world
Old
order,
world order,
right?
yes, yes,
And also there are allegations. Whenever the petrodollar is under fire,
yes.
such wars come up, right? So
Hmm.
there are all kinds of theories. I don't know which is correct. I'm not a geopolitical expert,
Hmm.
right? So what we have observed over a period of time is that when we thought that manual wars are not going to be fought, then we saw the Ukraine war coming up,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Similarly, now all these bombs into Iran, Israel, and Middle East. What is happening to the world? We are seeing some crazy politicians doing crazy shit, right? That is what I see, and I think this is going to continue as long as these crazy powers are power hungry. As long as these politicians are going to stay hungry for power, they will do these crazy things.
Absolutely. No, you've really summed it up so well. But now moving on to my favorite segment of the show, which is the rapid fire. I want to ask Shakur the author, Shakur the journalist, or Shakur the CEO marketing guy. Who is your favorite Shakur?
Ah, always a journalist.
Always a journalist.
Yeah.
Wonderful. One piece of advice that you want to give your peers to handle Gen Zs.
I think handle them like any other human being.
That is so on
Yeah.
point. And what is your favorite sector to cover? I mean, is it always science, or do you like to also dabble into other aspects? Like even in science, what is your favorite news story to cover or read?
See, I may not be covering politics, but I have a good grasp of what I read about politics across the world,
Hmm.
geopolitics. If it is global politics or local politics, I read a lot about it. But yeah, science is something as a profession. As I said earlier, that critical thinking. I want to develop that critical thinking, and I also want others to develop that. That is why SciTech, we developed this SciTech literacy platform, right?
Yes,
We're
yes.
doing workshops through it, so that people can make sense of how AI can be good and bad at the same time.
Hmm.
How climate change is happening. What is the misinformation around climate change? How we need to talk about biodiversity,
Yes.
right? How we need to humans need to think about the planet that we have, because there is no, like they say, there is no planet B yet,
Yes. Very
right?
true.
Even if it was, it will not be Earth,
It will not
right?
be Earth.
So I think, yeah, scientific temperament, I think everybody should have that.
Hmm. That's so right. That's so true. And when it comes to probably your interest in science, would you be more inclined towards healthcare or more inclined towards technology?
That's that's I would say healthcare. Hmm.
Healthcare more.
Yeah.
And if you could speak to your 15-year-old self, what would be the one piece of advice that you would give them today?
I would say have the same curious mind, make the same mistakes, learn from your mistakes, and develop your brains. Evolve as a person Do not let the slop and the post-truthism and others impact you. Impact your. Do not become numb to the pain of others.
Hmm.
Have that human angle always, those human antennae always on.
That is so right. So thank you so much for your time today. It was such an amazing time I had on this podcast. I don't know how much time we spoke for, but I always feel when I speak to you that I want to speak more, and I want to learn more from you. And I hope that you keep taking out time for us and embolden the message of hum PR karne wale.
Thank you so much. You're doing a wonderful job. Bringing in people and having these conversations where people can speak their mind out, right? They don't have to have any filters. Yeah. So congratulations for that.
Thank you so much, sir. And you please keep watching Hum PR Karne Wale only on NIAP. Every Sunday 4 p.m. we try to come to you, but if we don't, then we'll just drop in and let you know. So subscribe and hit the bell icon so that you never miss an update.